Hi, this is Carson from Guys with Games, and today we'll do Lesson 5 in our 20-part series on grammar, adverbs. The lesson will consist of 5 units, including single-word adverbs, adverbial phrases, frequency and sequencing adverbs, and an activity. To skip ahead directly to a certain chapter, view the timestamps in the description. In Lesson 1, we learned what an adverb does. It modifies the verb. Let's continue by looking at how to form single-word adverbs. Most adjectives can be used as adverbs simply by adding the suffix ly. Here are some examples, but notice how it's not affected by how many syllables are in the word. When an adjective ends in a short y, the y is removed and we add ily. We end up with examples like happily, easily, and unluckily. However, when an adjective ends in a long y sound, in a word such as shy, we keep the y and add ly. This looks strange, but it is correct. Here are some more examples. There are also irregular adverbs, and these need to be memorized. Good changes to well. Fast stays fast. Hard stays hard. This one is especially tricky because hardly is also an adverb, but the meaning is not carried from the adjective. We run into another tricky problem when we encounter an adjective that ends in ly, something like the word ugly. How do we change this adjective into an adverb? Is there even a way to do it? Well, of course, the answer is yes. You can either think of a synonym for this adjective and add ly like the normal rule, and we end up with something like disgustingly or hideously. Or you can use other words to help you out. Let's learn this particular phrase. In an ugly way, or in an ugly manner. Way and manner here are synonymous. They mean the same thing. But we can use this phrase to describe the verb using an adjective that ends in ly. That brings us to our next chapter, adverbial phrases. A phrase of any kind is when multiple words work together to perform a single function, and in an adverbial phrase, that function is to modify the verb. Let's look at this funny sentence. Uncle Rico threw the football over the mountains. The words over the mountains, although none of them an adverb, they work together as an adverbial phrase. They modify the way in which Uncle Rico threw the football. Now that we know a little bit about what adverbs look like, let's explore some examples as we learn the ways in which adverbs can modify a verb. They can modify the time the verb happens. They can use words like soon or in the morning. Adverbs can also modify the frequency the verb happens, using words like usually or twice a day. They can modify the place the verb happens, using words like downstairs or in the backyard. They can modify the manner by using words like beautifully or like her mother. They can modify the quality, such as sweetly or well enough. They can modify the reason by using words like because or in order to. They can modify the duration using words like temporarily or for many years. And they can also modify kind of affirming or negating the verb altogether, using words like definitely, never, and no longer. Let's take a closer look at adverbs of frequency. When I teach adverbs of frequency in my class, I always list them on the board and assign these percentage values for what they literally mean. But it's also important for me to explain to my students that we often use these words in a non-literal way, or in kind of like a comparison to a normal person. You might hear someone say, for example, that they go to the movies quite often. Now that doesn't mean that they spend 60% of their life in the movie theater. What it does mean, though, is that they feel they do this more than the average person. In the last chapter of this lesson, we'll look at sequencing adverbs, which are especially important when we want to produce good writing habits. The first thing I do when I teach these is draw a linear timeline on the board and introduce the idea of chronological order. We'll then start listing either single-word adverbs or adverbial phrases that convey some type of chronological order of events. These words will be used to start sentences in a paragraph that is organized in chronological order. And now for an activity to review what you've learned called Hello, Mr. Lee. These are essentially rebus puzzles pasted onto a name tag. What the student needs to do is look at this word, identify it, and then be able to spell the answer. And the answer is always an adverb. For example, number 1 here is likely. Number 2, quietly. Number 3, patiently. Now these can be words that your students already know and should be easy enough for them to understand, or they can be words that you want them to know and would be difficult, but they can take a guess. Here's one for our viewers. If you think you know the answer, post it in the comments. Now these are easy enough to make on your own, but if you want a copy of the ones we use, visit us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks again for watching, and have a nice day.